And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show, Friday, November 22nd. I am Josh Engleman, here to break down an 8-game NBA slate. We've got the NBA Cup again today. We've got some really weird pricing, and we're going to lead off with that in the Brooklyn game. Some of these games, not so good. Honestly, most of these games, not so good. Boston, Washington is disgusting. Golden State, Pels, disgusting. Portland, Houston, disgusting. It's all bad. We'll have some fun breaking it all down. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Franz might just be the best player in the NBA at this point. All right, Chips McGee, first time live listener. Hope I get a shout out so I can tell my kids I'm famous. Well, I read that, but no shout out. Just kidding, Chips McGee. Thanks for being here. Wait until you guys see some of this stupid pricing, particularly on FanDuel. You can see it on the screen right now. Next level incompetence for today. I don't even know how it happens. Nick Claxton, flatten in 3,500 on FanDuel, 65% owned. How could he be so asleep at the wheel for the starting center of the Nets? It's insane. It's insane. Yeah, Franz might be 10K soon. I watched that. I woke up this morning and watched that dagger 3. Just step back bomb with a hand in his grill. So good. So good. Larry, I'm on vacay. You nailed it. How is FanDuel going to work today? Yeah, shout out to the FanDuel people yesterday. How did that end up shaking out? Obviously, nobody was getting their stuff in, but did they send out emails? Did you guys request your refunds? Because if you don't say something to them, they won't give a shit. Yeah, Franz is on one. And it's like a real one, too. That's not just like phony statistical success. His advanced plus minus for the season is like 3rd or 4th in the year, if I remember correctly. Anyway, we got a lot to break down, so we're going to dive into it right now. And we're starting in Brooklyn. Well, technically, we're starting in Philadelphia, but Brooklyn Nets, 5.5-point dogs in Philly, 217 total. Now, we've got a Q tag on Nick Claxton. We've got a Q tag on Dorian Finney-Smith. There's no ownership coming into Brooklyn on the DraftKings side. 7% to Cam Thomas. That's it. And like I got 8% of him on my first sim. Nothing special if we're talking about Brooklyn. And then we get to FanDuel. So Nick Claxton's 5,800 on DK. And the flat min 3,500 on FanDuel. This is it's so irritating. Honestly, I hope he's just out. It would be so much better if he just doesn't play. No one wants this. One, we're like probably not going to be confident in his minutes. But there's probably not going to be a better value play on FanDuel than Nick Claxton, even in, like I gave him 25 minutes. He's already 7.6x value at 3,500. It's insanity. It is complete and utter insanity that could even be a thing. I truly don't get it. I don't know how that could like slip through the cracks. He should have never gotten repriced in the first place. What I actually think is the issue, I wouldn't be surprised if this had something to do with naming conventions. And that somehow like his historical price history is attached to Nick Claxton. But then when it got switched up, maybe it is Nicholas Claxton now. I didn't even look to see if what I'm saying is a true statement for the FanDuel side. But if he is Nick Claxton on FanDuel, yeah, he is. I wonder if that's what happened. I wonder if them changing his naming conventions screwed that up. Because there's no other justification for him to be priced as if he's me today. So I wonder if they lost their link to their history of salary, and then he's just the flat min dude. Can Cam Thomas get traded? What's that contract? I mean, yes, he can. I don't totally know who would want him. He'd actually be kind of like unfun to trade because he's a restricted free agent next year. So he's actually up for an extension in the offseason. You're probably right, Chips. You're probably right. So weird. You guys just got to build a name table. It's very simple. Makes it very easy to make that fix. So look, if Nick Claxton's in today, he's the best play on FanDuel. He was 67% optimal for me. He's 66% owned. It's insane. Now, Dorian Finney-Smith and Ben Simmons are both getting about 10% ownership on FanDuel. That's fine. I definitely like Simmons more than I like Dorian Finney-Smith there. I mean, we're talking about, Simmons being point guard center eligible, which is fun to see. 5,400 is a reasonable price. I think the ownership on Ben Simmons is right. And obviously the Claxton ownership is right. But let's cross our fingers that Claxton just doesn't play here. Like, think about what that means on FanDuel. This is an 8-game slate. And Nick Claxton's going to be in 2/3 of the center spot. Whatever. There's not that much that looks good here. Like, I don't really want to get to Schroeder, Cam Johnson. It's really Cam Thomas and then Claxton and Simmons. And that's Claxton and Simmons pieces are FanDuel specific. I mean, you could see the optimal rates here for me on DraftKings. I got Cam Thomas to 14. Nobody else was higher than 4. Anthony Davis. I don't. Like, if we get word that, Clax is limited to 20 minutes today, I could see it. Like, if he goes back and plays, if he's the starter and plays his normal, 29-minute starter run, there is no opportunity. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's over a fantasy point per minute playing his normal run at a price tag that's $2,500 less than it should be. There's nothing you could do there. You would have to know that he's set for 20 minutes to start having that discussion. If 29 is available to him like it normally is, there's no justification. It doesn't matter. It's just too good. You can't make up that kind of value. Like, if he were just some center, that would get a little weirder. Look, 20 minutes of Claxton is still going to be one of the best value plays on the slate, but at least that creates a weird dynamic where you can get to some of those payouts. Now, the Philly side, I think everybody's aware of what's going on for Philadelphia at this point. Let me get this injury report pulled up. So, Paul George is going to be out for a little bit. Nothing too major, but certainly going to be out for a minute here. Kyle Lowry is also out with that hip strain. We're getting 20% ownership into Yabusele on DraftKings. This is equally as stupid, but he's only 20% owned. He's 3,600 on DraftKings and has power forward center eligibility. Meanwhile, FanDuel got this one right. He's 4,700 on FanDuel. So Yabusele should be getting a bunch of ownership on DK. He's definitely usurped Andre Drummond to a degree. Not that it's just center, but he's playing the 4, he's playing the 5. Those minutes seem pretty firm. He's just there. So that ownership makes a lot of sense. And then we're not really seeing anything else coming in for Philly. It's around 10% ownership for McCain on both sites. I do think he looks like probably the overall best option for Philly across both sites. Yabusele is just so different on DraftKings that it's a little bit different to talk about. Do you guys want to get to Embiid today? I mean, in theory, this is a great matchup for him, especially if Claxton ends up out. Because he's 3% owned on DraftKings at 10-1. He's not owned on FanDuel at 10-8. But remember, there's only 34% of roster spots to get a center on FanDuel at this point. Is Embiid a mildly interesting GPP play to me? For sure. Because there's just no ownership there, and he does have a real ceiling. But he's clearly not the Embiid we're aware of right now. But you're not going to Caleb Martin or Oubre I don't think we're going to Maxey yet. I don't really see him playing enough minutes yet. And then you're not going to anything else at the bottom. But it's really just Yabusele on DraftKings, Nick Claxton on FanDuel, and nothing else that you want to actively pay attention to. So game number 2, Boston Celtics. You guys want to hear how crazy this one is? So the Boston Celtics are 15.5-point favorites in Washington, 237 total. I actually have this line as Boston with as 19-point favorites. So I don't even think 15.5 is reasonable enough. And let's not forget, point differential matters here. They are going to, I would imagine, try to absolutely eviscerate Washington today because they've booked that win for Cleveland, but they're actually behind Cleveland by 13 points in point differential, and they're still behind Atlanta by 11 points in point differential, and they dropped that game to Atlanta. So Boston desperately needs to win this game by 1 billion if they can. They just do. Now, for right now, everybody for Boston is in that's normally in. They don't have a single injury status that we don't know, like other than Porzingis. And we're seeing the ownership coming in. 30% to Jaylen Brown on both sites, 25 to Derek White on both sites. Tatum's 10 on DraftKings and around 15 on FanDuel. And then Al Horford is actually a little bit north of 15 on the DraftKings side, still just 4,800 for reasons that make zero sense to me. He's playing like 28 to 32 minutes a night now. It's not the 24 that he was playing like every night to start the season. Coach Chris, I would probably not want to do 100% Embiid on a day where he is functionally unowned. That's probably a stand that is wildly unnecessary. But all these guys for Boston that are getting ownership should. Like, I like Horford on FanDuel at 5,500, and he is unowned. That's pretty interesting to me as a pivot. But, like, Jaylen Brown should be 30% owned on both sides. To me, he's the best guy you can get to from Boston on DraftKings. Tatum should be 10 to 20% owned. Derek White should be 25% owned. You can get to some Drew Holiday, but he's definitely the guy that gets like the least amount of bump in these situations. All they want to do is make sure Drew Holiday is healthy in April. But everything on paper just says they're going to try to beat and when I say try, it's the Wizards. Everybody's beating them by 20 this year. So get Tatum. Get Brown. Brown is a priority to me. White is dangerously close to a priority to me. But I want Horford. I would like to make a mild case for Sam Hauser here. 3,500, small forward, power forward eligible, and he's starting to play a couple extra minutes. I got him in for 21 now. So I like the Sam Hauser value option on DraftKings if you're trying to get away from a different, like, sub 4K guy that's getting owned. But they need point differential here, so get ready for it. Now, the Washington side, this should not come as any surprise to anyone. No one's getting any ownership. A small trickle to Joval and nothing else. Basically no one is owned more than 3%. I kind of like Kuzma as a GPP alternative. 6,600 on DraftKings, power forward eligible. 6,800 on FanDuel, small forward, power forward eligible, unowned. If for any reason this game could be mildly close, like the minutes for Kuzma have definitely been a little weird. It's clearly like a different vibe for the Wizards right now. But like, if I'm going to take somebody, it's probably Kyle Kuzma. Although maybe I'm just overrating him because he sucks in real life. But like, he's still a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. Unowned. Yeah. Is the game probably not close? Yes. It's probably not good. But if I'm going to get to one Washington Wizard today, it's Kuzma. And I don't think a lot of people are going to say that today. The gap between these two teams is horrific. Horrific. It's so bad. No, the Wizards do not have a whole... Well, they got a whole lot of options. They're just all not good options. But I essentially don't want anything from Washington. I mean, I had them in the aggregate. Like, I got one individual share of Joe Bell. That was it. I had 35% of Jaylen Brown. I had 20% of Derek White, 15 of Horford, 15 of Tatum, even a little bit of Drew Holiday, 6% of K-Dot. Now, I didn't get to Hauser, but I wouldn't mind if I did. This game, man. Woof. Seriously, woof. Golden State and New Orleans. So this one we basically can't talk about right now. So Warriors are 10.5 point favorites in New Orleans, 223 total. For the Warriors, it's easy. Melton is obviously going to be done for the year with that ACL tear. Curry's probable. 12% ownership is coming into Andrew Wiggins on DraftKings. Low single digits for everybody else. You're getting Wiggins, Draymond, and Steph between like 10 and 15 on FanDuel, which is fine. But I don't really find Golden State to be that interesting. Like, nobody stands out here. I think you can make a case for Trace Jackson Davis on DraftKings in particular at 3,700. His minutes have started to tick up a hair, but I just assume that we have way better value than that by the time we get to 7 o'clock. So I don't see anything on Golden State where I want to go crazy and get to them. Now, they're 2-0 in the group. They don't exactly have a big point differential, but they got that win over Dallas. They want to win this one big because Game 4 in this group is at Denver. And if Jokic is back at that point, like that's a tough game for Golden State to win. So like if you anticipate them beating New Orleans and losing to Denver, then we're looking at a situation where there might be multiple 3-1 teams in the West Group C. And if that's the case, while Golden State has the tiebreaker over Dallas from the head-to-head result, they're also 30 points back in point differential because of how bad Dallas beat New Orleans. So they need to run this New Orleans score up if they can. But it's so hard to pick anybody from Golden State because everybody plays like 22 minutes, except for Curry, Green, and Wiggins. So there's no priorities here. Now, for New Orleans, we legitimately can't even talk about them right now. Alvarado out, Herb Jones out, Carlo Makovich out, DeJounte Murray out, Zion out. But Jordan Hawkins questionable, Brandon Ingram questionable, Yves Missi questionable, CJ McCollum doubtful. I can't read into this at all. If Brandon Ingram is in, regardless of the status of any other player on this team, he looks okay on FanDuel because he's 8,600 and he has an MPE projected for 20% ownership right now. So no matter what we get other than Ingram out, Ingram will look decent on FanDuel. I think Trey Murphy will also look decent on FanDuel no matter what news comes out. He's going to play, 29, 30, 31 minutes. He's like a 15% owned guy and he should be. But if Jordan Hawkins and Yves Missi both don't play, then yeah, we're probably creating some other value somewhere else. If they're all if Ingram is out as well, then we're probably creating some value somewhere else. We have no idea what this is going to ultimately look like. And digging into it right now for 3 questionables and a doubtful on this Pelicans team is not really a scenario where we're going to be able to get a lot of good information. Ingram is a piece that we can talk. Ingram and Murphy are pieces we could talk about regardless of anybody else being in. We know that we can get to those guys. We know what their role is with the team. They're the real players on the team. After that, your guess is as good as mine. Tony Anderson, did I hear you were in Wilmington, North Carolina the other day? I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina every day. I mean, technically speaking, not today, but yeah, that's where I live. Assuming you are saying that because you are also here, I'm in Bald Head right now. So we need Pelicans news. We're probably not going to... It's a 7:30 tip, so we're probably not going to get it quite late. Oh, Tony, nice. Nice. Do you visit MJ's old house? I mean, I know where it is. It's just off a generic-ass road in a section of town that you wouldn't think anybody would be in. But it's just like a normal road, normal house. I used to live a bit closer to it. I don't as much. But yeah, it's there. It's there. We got Fayetteville in the house. We got Durham in the house. Frank Howe's coming to Wilmington tonight. I'm taking over, man. I'm taking over. Should do a meetup. And by I should do a meetup, I mean there's no way that I would ever do that. All right, let's get to game 4. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet. Indy, Pacers, 5.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 237 total. Absolutely like PD Pablo. Absolutely. Look at all of these North Carolina peeps in the house. Got the Nightdale area, Greensboro. How are the beaches in Wilmington? Good, I guess. I don't know. I don't ever go to them. Frank, I don't think rolling up to a high school to watch basketball is what I'm going to be doing. But I get it. I get it. So Pacers, little bit up in the air here. Ben Shepherd questionable once again. Jarris Walker is questionable for this one. We are getting some ownership into Indy. Around 20% ownership to Miles Turner on DraftKings, fully deserved at $6,500, $600 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. This Nick Claxton situation is definitely creating some weirdness on the FanDuel side. Turner unowned. I don't think it'd be crazy to go that way in a GPP. Mathurin looks okay. Pascal Siakam looks okay. Walker, if he is in on DraftKings, looks okay. It's really just Turner to me as I probably like Pascal Siakam more than most on DraftKings, and that seems to be like a pretty consistent thing for me. It's not showing in my ownership, but it does show in my optimals. But yeah, Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker, we got to wait on those Q tags because that will definitely redistribute quite a bit of minutes. But it's Turner on DraftKings for sure at 6,500. Really good play. Definitely in my top 10. What is it? Let me look at it and see where he is properly. Yeah, he's 6th. So Miles Turner, one of the best plays you'll find on DraftKings. But we need that injury news on the Indy side. My second option for Indy would be Pascal Siakam. You can get to some Turner, or you can get to some Mathurin, you can get to some Halliburton, but nothing too crazy there. Now the Milwaukee side, they're essentially about full strength. Giannis probable. Obviously, Ryan Rollins is looking like he might end up being done for the season with that if he has to have shoulder surgery. And then Chris Middleton has been cleared for contact. Probably going to be like 2 or 3 weeks away if I had to guess. But we've been used to him being out. There's barely any ownership coming in on the DraftKings side. 10% to Giannis on DraftKings. Everybody else is in single digits. I think if you're playing anybody from Milwaukee on the DraftKings side, it's only Giannis, Dame, and Brook Lopez. And honestly, I don't think any of them are that big of a priority. I mean, Giannis is 12-1 power forward center. Clearly the projected total for him is massive, but nothing too crazy. He's 50% owned right now on FanDuel. Now, I don't think it's going to be 50 by the time we get to lock. I think that will come down and probably end up in like that 35 range. But he looks good. I kind of like Dame more, though, if I'm being honest. 8,400 for Dame, 20% owned, and I have him deserving every bit of that. But again, Brook Lopez also looks pretty good, given the fact that there's just no ownership to anybody not named Nick Claxton on FanDuel. So the pivots exist to get away from Claxton, which is kind of nuts. I don't know if it's nice or NY Ice, but won the fadeaway last night. Love the Sims. Should have rocked the avatar, but thanks, Sims. Amazing tool. Literally won on the Franz game winner. That's awesome, man. Congrats. Good to see. FanDuel says they had no reported issues last night. That's the best. Look, in those situations, take screenshots of everything you do and send those emails right at lock and be like, look, your stuff sucked. That's your only shot. Because if you don't say anything to them, they will not care. You got to be all over them the whole time. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get your stuff back. Tap my life. Why is the default for everyone DraftKings over FanDuel when doing slates? Bigger contests, bigger footprint in the DFS industry. That's really what it is. More people play on DraftKings, and there are more sizable prize pools on DraftKings than there are on FanDuel. So yeah, there's really not much here in this Milwaukee Indy game, at least as for right now. And on Milwaukee, it's, play Giannis and Dame. That's not really like analysis that you guys needed. That's the only obvious thing that anybody would ever say about this. I made a giant mistake by not pouring another cup of coffee before I started this show. We'll work on it. Let's hit the schedule for the rest of the day. Let's pull up the old phone. Make sure we get it. So, schedule for the rest of today. Lots of shows. So we've got NFL strategy show coming up at 10 o'clock. So right after this one, Laffy and Greg will be breaking it down. I will be back on the deeper dive at 5 o'clock with DK. Greg and Eric will be handling live before lock. And then playback will also be Greg and Eric. Shout out to Eric for covering for me on playback tonight. Josh, you always start early. We here in California don't wake up early. I mean, I start at 9 o'clock every day. Oh, Christian, I'm gonna hit you with some sadness on this one. Connaughton worth a flyer. I want to reprogram anybody that watches this show to stop asking about people that should never be talked about. And this one in particular is egregious because he's not even in the rotation anymore. He hasn't played the last 2 games, and they haven't even had people that would make that stop. He could not be less playable. We get way too many questions of like, hey, is this 20-minute 7th dude on this team playable today? Everybody is dramatically overthinking what we do here. That's just not how this works. But yes, do not play Pat Connaughton because the most likely scenario today is that he also does not play. You're definitely going to need somebody that steps on the floor. Otherwise, you will accrue 0 fantasy points. It's next level dumb. Yeah, that's some sort of Sean V type question. But yeah, it's not good. Concern Philly rests at 0-2 in the cup. 0 concern. Completely 0. They're still regular NBA games. Matthew Samples. Yeah. Odd Shopper live at noon today. Yeah, there's nothing to trade Pat Connaughton for. If Pat Connaughton can't get on the floor for the Bucks, he's not getting on the floor for anybody. Nobody wants him. Yeah, Steven, you got this. Everybody should make the note. I should only play players that play. But yeah, Pat Connaughton hasn't played in at least 2 games, if not 3. Let me look. Pat Connaughton did not play the past 2 games, fully out of the rotation. Lakers need to trade D'Lo. Well, that would require another team to want him, and no team would do that. So they're going to try to trade him, but they're not going to get anything for him, nor should they. What's the trade that I want to see happen this season? That's a good question. We got enough time to hit these next 4 games, so let me just scroll past every team and see if anything catches my eye. No. I mean, I'd love to see Cleveland be able to do something. Tat, why would the Wizards trade Kyle Kuzma for an expiring D'Angelo Russell? I'll answer that. They wouldn't. It'd be cool if the Pistons did something. I mean, Golden State doing something to turn picks and depth into like a number 2. Although the way that I look at Golden State, if Golden State's going to make a trade, they have to make a trade for somebody better than Steph. And that's basically impossible. So I'd love to see Golden State do something, but if you're bringing somebody back in, it has to be someone that is at least as good or probably better than Steph on the wing. And that is not going to be an easy thing to do. Rockets doing some sort of consolidation trade could be really interesting. Because they've got a lot of moving parts. I mean, Lakers have enough picks that they can make a move for a third dude. Memphis, Miami, no. Milwaukee, no. Minnesota. I mean, if Minnesota flips Randall, I don't think they're going to do that, but that could be interesting if that was a path they wanted to go. I mean, do the Knicks try to pry a center? Like, do the Knicks? I mean, like they're running out of assets, but like getting some sort of like center insurance might not be the worst problem in the world. I'd love to see Orlando get another creator. Philly's doomed. Phoenix has nothing. Portland's irrelevant. Sacramento's irrelevant. Spurs are irrelevant, although they could do whatever they wanted. Toronto's irrelevant. Utah's irrelevant. Washington's irrelevant. Yeah, there's not much. I think it's going to be a really quiet deadline. I think it's going to be a very quiet deadline. Reeves is the third dude in Lakeland. I mean, yeah, that's fine. But if Austin Reeves is your third guy, then you're not a good team. If you're going to rely on Austin Reeves to be your third best dude, then adios. You're not going to be that good. Cam Thomas to Orlando. Yeah, I mean, I see where you're going there. Whoever comes in would he's going to have to get paid this offseason. So I don't think that fits the salary structure. But he's like the sort of guy that I would to a degree, is like sort of the guy Orlando needs. Like they need just a straight up bucket getter. But that guy has to also be like a 20-minute a game guy. Because when push comes to shove, you want the ball in Paolo Banchero's hands and Franz Wagner's hands, and Cam Thomas is not going to let that happen. Look, I'm not saying that Reeves isn't good, but third best dude on a team is not enough to get it done. You want to tell me that he as a part of a closing five of a good team? Yeah, I'm in there. But if he's your third best player, then you don't have enough. You can't do that and then play Boston and then the third best player is Jaylen Brown or Porzingis. Choose your own adventure, or Derek White. Choose your own adventure there. You can't make that up. But if Reeves is your fifth dude, if Reeves is like your KCP equivalent talent, different players obviously. That's what you need by the time you get to those final 2 rounds of the playoffs. Because Eventually, you start only being able to compare against the other good teams. And the replacement level, when you get into 40 minutes a night of your best players, that shit goes up a lot. Jeremy, yeah, I mean, the Bulls are like the worst front office in basketball, so I'm sure they like want LaVine now. Whatever the Bulls are gonna do, they're gonna do it as wrong as any team in the league can do it. They've been an incompetent front office for as long as I can remember, even transitioning from Garpax to Karnishevis or however you're supposed to say it. They're terrible. They are probably the worst front office in the league. Yeah, like I would like Cam Thomas to be on the floor for like whatever minutes Paolo's not, but you don't want him taking shots on a good team. I wanted Orlando to get Malik Monk. So, I mean, and which could still happen at the deadline. Method Man. Whatever rumblings you hear, ignore them. Ignore them. Because whatever Chicago is going to do, they're going to do the opposite of the correct thing. Whether that's trading multiple firsts for Vooch and trading away the better center, they're just going to whiff. They're going to trade Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey. Whiff. It's just, all they do is screw up. All they do is screw up. All right, Atlanta and Chicago. Let's get back into this. Hawks, 1.5 point favorites in Chicago. 243 total. I have this with a 104.6 pace. For reference, I have the Brooklyn Philly game at 94. I have 10 more possessions in this game than in the least fast game of today. That's nuts. I assume these two teams are last in pace, or at least close to it. Or first in pace, rather, or at least close to it. Yeah, Chicago is first in pace on dunks and threes. Atlanta is third. This is going to be a track meet. Hot takes. Glad you're here. Can Cole Anthony not be the Malik Monk? No. No, he cannot. So Hawks. Everybody's in that's normally in. Like they're finally getting all their dudes back and we're starting to see what their rotation can actually be. No Seth Lundy, no Dominic Barlow, no Mohamed Gay. None of that matters. And we're just getting like light ownership to everything on Atlanta. Around 15 for Trey, around 15 for Jalen Johnson. Okongwu is 20 on FanDuel because he has the power forward eligibility. Bogdan Bogdanovic is getting 20% ownership on FanDuel at 4,500. Probably a little high for what it is right now, but he's shooting guard, small forward. And like at some point in time, Bogdan Bogdanovic is just going to play like 28 to 30 minutes. And you're going to wish that you got there that day early. So I can get it here. That might be a hair early right now, but the game environment is amazing. S&P, thank you for that. But like for Atlanta, I don't know how you're prioritizing anything here for Atlanta. You're going to play 10 to 15% of Trae Young. You're going to play like 15% of Jalen Johnson. I don't really think you can get to Dyson Daniels right now. You know, like DeAndre Hunter maybe on DraftKings because he's $700 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. Okongwu for sure on FanDuel is at least like worth a discussion. But it's really just a giant unappealing mess. Like just a bunch of average dudes. The appeal for this one is just how good of an offensive environment it is. Atlanta's defense is nothing special. Chicago's defense is actively horrible. Both of these teams play super fast. They both lean more offense than defense for sure. So there's a lot of pieces that you're happy to have, but at least from Atlanta, there's nobody that I am like rubber stamping awesome. Chicago's slightly different. We're getting 30 to 40% ownership on Zach LaVine across DraftKings and FanDuel. We're getting like 25% to Dosunmu on DraftKings and 40 on FanDuel. That's going to be a little higher than it should be, but it'll come down. You're getting around 10% to Kobe White. You're getting 10% to Vooch on DraftKings. You're getting 20 to Giddey on both sites. And all of this is happening just because this entire offensive environment is boosted. Now, I'm a little apprehensive about some of this, but from an ownership perspective, I'm also getting it. So like Levine's 30% owned, I'm there and then some. Dosunmu's 25% owned, I'm there. Josh Giddey's 20% owned, I'm there. I have 10% of White. I have 10% of Vooch. So I'm holding hands with the field on DraftKings in terms of aggregate ownership. There's just a lot to like. If I'm getting to one guy here, it's Levine, just because of position. Shooting guard, small forward just makes things easier. Dosunmu, it's not fun. And will probably end up creating enough value that like this sort of ownership comes down. But I understand why he's getting what he's getting. But like Levine is really the priority from the DK side for Chicago. Giddey's probably second. It's not fun. There's a lot going on here on DraftKings. It's a big game. 243 total. What's the next closest total? So we got 237 in Boston, Washington, and Indy, Milwaukee. This game's already 6 points ahead of that. But then everything else is in the mid 220s, or you get that Brooklyn Philly game sub 220. So you're just going to have a lot of Atlanta and Chicago because it's the game that's going to have the most fantasy points. Or at least it would be the expected most fantasy points by quite a bit. Now, from NBA Cup perspective, Atlanta is 2-0. The Bulls are 0-1. So if the Bulls lose, the Bulls are out in this group. They're not going to catch Boston and Cleveland. We know that. But technically speaking, they're still alive. So they want to win. Atlanta is 2-0. They stole that game from Boston. So this is actually a massive game for Atlanta. If they can win and get some point differential, they could be in a really weird tiebreaker scenario if this one breaks weird. So Atlanta is going to be going for this one too, if that changes your decisions. David Correa taking the role of, was it Christian from earlier? Craig, ? No. Torrey Craig will likely only serve people Gatorade today. Unless Patrick Williams ends up out. No, wait, Patrick, hold on. Did that status change? All right, I'm going to walk this one back. David Correa, this is my apologies. My injury status pulled in Patrick Williams as questionable. Patrick Williams is just out. So I am wrong. Look, this is a good example of why you don't pay attention to the injury status on DraftKings and FanDuel. Because when you automate and pull these injury statuses in from a site, a lot of the times they're incorrect. And that is what I'm seeing right now because I have Patrick Williams in. So let me pull him out right now and we can take a look at Craig. My apologies, David Correa. I had him marked as questionable, so I was never going to be looking at him. So let me pull him out of here. Don't know why that pulled in as questionable. Let's get Torrey Craig in for, 24 probably? 22? We'll be able to evaluate this immediately. Played 28. Let's go 26. And then I'll hide the rest on Buzelis. Yeah, that looks okay. Terry Phillips. That definitely makes me like Dosunmu even more than I do right now. I'm going to give him another minute as well and bring another one down off of Buzelis. So, back to the Torrey Craig question. $4,500 on DraftKings, $3,800 on FanDuel. So Craig is a no on DraftKings at $4,500. Craig is a big yes on FanDuel at $3,800, small forward eligible. He's pulling 35% ownership on FanDuel right now. So yes to Torrey Craig on FanDuel, no to Torrey Craig on DraftKings, or at least like essentially no on DraftKings. But I don't know why that injury status pulled in incorrectly. That was annoying. So if you're playing on either site today, you are going to be paying a ton of interest to Atlanta and Chicago. It is the best DFS game that exists. Portland and Houston. Going to be tough to talk about this one for right now. Injury statuses for Portland. We have the Q tag on Anthony Simons and the Q tag on Scoot Henderson. DeAndre Ayton is doubtful once again. There's no real ownership coming into Jeremy Grant or Kamara or Sharp. There's no real ownership coming into Anthony Simons or Scoot right now. Obviously, there's only one place, well, 1.5 places where any real ownership is coming in. Time Lord, Robert Williams, is 40% owned on DraftKings. Power forward center eligible, 4,800. So you got to get there. He's been playing great now that he's back. And with no DeAndre Ayton around, like the minutes are they just exist. He will be out there for more than enough time to pay off a $4,800 salary if you need him to. I got 36% of him on my run. He's 39% owned. Donovan Clingan is 10% owned on DraftKings at 4,400. I got to 12. You know, like Grant and Kamara and Sharp are like completely meaningless guys to me. Robert Williams is a priority today. He is. Yeah, Mitchell, there's nowhere to trade Ayton. There's only one like reasonable spot, but no one is going to want to pay DeAndre Ayton what he makes. Like, obviously, he should just be on the Pelicans, but that's not going to happen. He still has $35.5 million for next year. So there's nowhere to dump there's nowhere to put him. There's nowhere to put him. Now, the Houston side of this one is loaded with ownership on DraftKings. Listen to this. 20 to 25% ownership on DraftKings to Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, Dylan Brooks, and Amin Thompson. 15 to Tari Eason, 15 to Fred VanVleet, and 10 to Jabari Smith. These guys are massively owned, and I pretty much agree with all of it. I tend to be a little bit more interested in Jabari Smith. I don't have that much, but I got to 15% of VanVleet. I got to 20 of Green. I got to 20 of Şengün. I got to 20 of Brooks. I got to 25 of Eason. I got to 30 of Amin Thompson. Houston looks amazing here. Amazing. S&P, completely agree. Houston looks like probably the best overall team to me in terms of just the amount of options that are getting love. Now, on the FanDuel side, they're not as owned. The pricing isn't as good. They're more expensive pretty much across the board. But like Jalen Green's 30% owned on FanDuel at 6,300. Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, Dylan Brooks all got over 10%. Fred VanVleet's right there. So while the pricing isn't nearly as good on FanDuel, you're still getting to these guys a little bit. But on the Houston side, I'd say my favorite option is probably Jalen Green. Şengün would be a close second. And then, like, I don't mind rolling the dice on Jabari Smith and Amin Thompson. Jabari Smith is always interesting to me because he just feels like he gets one game every 2 to 3 weeks where everything goes in and he plays like 33 minutes. And it's like, well, you had to have Jabari Smith. At 4,600, like, he doesn't even have to have the craziest game to make that true. So I like keeping my eye on Houston. 2 to go, guys. Hit that like button. Sign up for Stokastic using the link in the description. You can get 1 month free of any sport package you want. That would cover your projections, your ownership, all of our advanced data, our entire simulation package. You can get in for free for a month. You wouldn't send a single cent to us to do this. You just have to sign up through one of our affiliates. The links are there. The instructions are there. And you're going to get something from the affiliate when you do it. Dallas Mavericks taking on the Denver Nuggets. This one could have been super duper interesting. Unfortunately, it's not. Well, it is, but not the way that we wanted it to. Both of these teams are 1-1 in West Group C. Now, Dallas has the massive point differential from beating the shit out of New Orleans. But loser of this game is out of the cup. So this one matters. Dallas has no Luka Doncic. Denver has a Q tag on Nikola Jokic. I'm assuming he's back. It's not an injury, so you just assume he comes back and he's himself, but we don't know officially if Jokic is playing yet. Even with no Luka Doncic on DraftKings, no one got to more than 7% ownership. And that's Jaden Hardy got to 7. On FanDuel, we got to 13% of PJ Washington. Everybody else is in single digits. I agree with all of it. I don't see anything on Dallas that I want to get to. Kyrie is too expensive, even if you give him the rate bumps. PJ Washington, if you think he's going to get up to 30-something minutes, sure. At least I could see it then. Nobody looks good here. One of my least favorite teams on the slate. I don't see a single name I want to click on with any sort of regularity. I find them to be wholesale unappealing. To me, there's nothing here for Dallas. On the Denver side, you get a $12,200 Nikola Jokic, 20% owned on DraftKings, 6 on FanDuel. If I'm going to pay up for somebody, it's Nikola Jokic. I like that pay up. I like him as a pivot to someone like Giannis, who's pulling a ton of ownership on FanDuel. If Jokic is back, he's just going to be himself. It's not coming back from an injury. If Jokic is in, you're not going to a single person from Denver otherwise. Everybody else looks bad. Coach Chris, Grimes, nope. See, this is another one. Quentin Grimes is projected for 1% ownership on DraftKings and 2 on FanDuel. We're talking about the 75th best play of the slate. A completely meaningless, useless dude whose name you shouldn't even think of today. Could play more minutes, sure. Will never look like a good play in any scenario today. As a value piece, no. Maybe he becomes a 4 or 5% owned guy, but there are a never-ending supply of Quentin Grimes today. But as of right now, the entire slate is ignoring him. Jokic didn't practice yesterday. I mean, he could just not be back yet. Him practicing is meaningless. He's not hurt. This isn't we don't know if he's just back in Denver, then he's playing. If he's not, then he's not. I assume he's just back and plays 36 minutes like it's every other day. But if he's not, then we'll probably create some value for one of these idiot centers. Probably not Dario Saric, but somebody. Horrific game for DFS, though, today. You would think there was some value here, and there's just not value here. We close it out. Sacramento and LA. Kings are 2.5-point favorites in LA, taking on the Clippers. Kings are getting everybody back. The only guy that's still out for Sacramento is Monk. DeRozan's back. Sabonis is back. Look at the ownership coming in on DraftKings to Sacramento. 1% to Fox, 1% to DeRozan, nothing else. Totally agree. As far as I'm concerned, Sacramento is not on the slate. It's basically the same scenario on FanDuel. 5% to Fox, 4 to Sabonis, 4 to DeRozan. You want to look at those guys as a GPP pivot? Fine. This game is not a particularly fast game. I actually have it with the second slowest pace. It is the second lowest total. I see Sacramento as like a giant cross-off. Just put a big X across that team. Clippers are a little different. Still no Norm Powell for this one. So we're getting close to 20% ownership on DraftKings to Harden. Just shy of 30 on FanDuel. I'm cool with that. He looks like he should be a guy getting some love. KPJ is getting that love again. He's 20% owned on both sites. I think that's where it should be. I went 21 minutes. Could certainly play more if the game's going well for him. But good value there. And then Zubats, unowned on both sites. I'm always willing to roll those dice. Amir Coffee is basically unowned on both sites. I guess I'm willing to roll those dice. Like, I'm definitely going to Amir Coffee before I'm going to Quentin Grimes right now. But it's not like you want a lot of Amir Coffee. Yeah, S&P, they're also on the short list there of teams that have an absolutely dreadful front office. I mean, they're relying on the young guys for sure. Christian Brown's looking solid. You know, they're getting Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther right now, but man, they gave themselves no wiggle room. But if you're going to the Clippers, it's KPJ and Harden as the priorities, Zubats as the pivot, and Amir Coffee as like another crappy value option. It's a fun slate. I like it for cup games. You got a decent enough spread. DraftKings kept the 2 late games on, so I thought that they were going to make this a 6-gamer, but they kept the 10 and the 10:30, so you get the full 8 on both sites, which is cool. But that's where we're at, guys. 8 games up, 8 games down. I'm back for the deeper dive later. I'll get contenders out shortly. Odd Shopper live at noon. But I like this slate. I think it's a fun one. I really do. So, I think that's going to do it, folks. I think we're going to pack it in here. So, thank you guys for being here. Hit the like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Enjoy your Friday, everybody. You'll get me a little bit later for the deeper dive. But for now, enjoy the rest of your Friday. I'll see you guys again for the deeper dive, and then I won't see you guys again until Monday. Later, everybody.